Hello girls, and thank you for logging in here to my answer video so that you can mark your own work on Lone Dog. If you remember, I set this piece of work at the beginning of the week, and now I'm setting a video to help you to go through it and mark it as I would in class. Now the first thing is, with the poem, I'm not reading it through, is to look at what it's about. The sense, what happens in the poem. Whenever you get a poem, it's important, first of all, to get a general idea of what you think you can get out of it. First thing is always look at the title. The title Lone Dog should give you a clue. It's about a dog. And so the first question is what kind of dog is described, etc. What does he like to do, etc. are all questions to help you go through how much you actually understood on reading that poem. So, these are the straightforward short answers. The first thing is the kind of dog we're describing is a dog who is a bit wild. He likes his freedom. He's prepared to fight for it. Sorry, the word is under the picture. That he describes himself as bad. He likes to tease sheep, silly sheep he calls them. He likes to cause trouble, howl at the moon, making noise in the night to keep, he says, fat souls from sleep. What does he hate was a bit more difficult. That was in the second stanza. And if you look at the first few lines, you see that he really doesn't like lap dogs, and I'll talk to you more about them later on. Dogs with no courage, quietly living with human beings. And how does he differ from other dogs? Well, he doesn't seem to want an easy life. And he's prepared to go alone and won't quit even when life is hard. That was more difficult to see, but we see that he was running. The other dogs didn't keep up with him, but he kept running, didn't he? And we need to look at that in the last stanza. And the poem, of course, Lone Dog, tells us he's on his own, but the question is why? Now, for those of you who find poems more difficult, if you cope with those, well done. If you find poems quite easy, I'm going to push you to challenge you and give you this longer, more complicated answer to consider. Don't want to scare you. If you find it too hard, don't worry. But if you were writing an essay, a longer piece of writing on the Lone Dog, you'd start off with a paragraph explaining what the sense of the poem is. So, in this poem, MacLeod, and you don't call her Irene, you call her MacLeod, presents a picture of a lone dog, put in quotes, happy to live a wild and antisocial life. See how I've summed that up? He is free and part savage, despising the more domesticated animals who lead a comfortable life but have lost their dignity, their pride. The path he chooses is lonely, as no one else can keep up or live with the hardships. So I've gone all the way through to the end. Hence, which means as a result, hence the title Lone Dog, as it summarizes his solitary life. And I've, quote, said one that he has chosen. And I've come to the conclusion that he chose it himself at the end of reading this poem. But let's see if you can get there too. So my first question about the words. We're getting into form, aren't we? Actually looking at it line by line so we can really sift out what the poet is meaning to say to us. And those are the questions I gave you. So the first question was about what part of speech is lean, keen, wild, lone, rough, tough, bad, mad, and I hope you all worked out that they were adjectives describing words. So you would talk about she uses a lot of adjectives in short phrases, lean dog. Every one of those is followed by the word dog, lean dog, keen dog, rough dog, tough dog, etc. The syllables, well, you can see they are monosyllabic words, which means that they have one syllable. Mono, one, syllabic, syllable. And do they rhyme? Well, yes, they do. Well, not all of them, but lean rhymes with keen, rough with tough, and mad with bad. So the poem not only rhymes at the end with lone own and sheep sleep, can you see that? But it also rhymes within the same line. So you've got lean dog, keen dog in the same line. So that's inside a line, and that is called internal rhyme. So that's another phrase that you can add to your list of devices that you would talk about, and that would be a good thing to get commented on in writing about it. But more important than all of that is why. Why does he do it? Now, some of you have said simply, well, because it makes it more interesting to rhyme. But I think we need to be a little bit more creative than that. Look at lean, keen, wild, lone, and think about them as words. Now, think about yourself being described in these ways. Would you say, I'm a lean girl, I'm a wild girl, I'm a bad girl, I'm a mad girl? Would you like someone else to call you those things? Because I think if you do call yourself a bad girl, you're trying to make a statement. You're being a bit defiant, aren't you? You're trying to shock. And if somebody else says, you're a bad girl, they are actually being in a way insulting. They're summarizing you in one word, which isn't true. It's not fair. You can't summarize a person by one word, can you? Oh, she's the bright one. She's the silly one. Oh, she's the sporty one. She's the dreamer. She's the dozy one. That is called stereotyping, isn't it? And we don't like it because we are much more complex than that. And so I'm reading that and thinking, the dog is calling himself those things because perhaps he's heard other people call them that, and so he's decided, well, if I'm supposed to be bad, well, then I'm going to be bad. And I've seen that with students, with children that I've known in my many years. You call them by a name, they live up to it. And I get the feeling that this is what has happened to this dog. So this is my deep thinking, and I'm being creative. This is how I've expressed it long writing, and if this is all too complicated for you, don't worry. But for those of you who think you can understand it, bear with me. I hope you can, and read it through and give it a think carefully again. So in the first stanza, the poet uses a string of strong monosyllabic adjectives to describe the lone dog. So there I've got in the word monosyllabic and I've got in the word adjective. So I get tick, tick for showing that kind of understanding. They all add up to imply, and this is my understanding why, that the dog has had a hard life. Now, if I think about all those words tell me he's had a hard life. If he's a mad dog, he's a bad dog, he's a rough dog, he's probably coming from a rough end of town. He's had a rough life. We also know that often without food from the word lean. Lean means slim, thin. There is also, I said, powerful internal rhyme. Rough, tough, lean, keen, mad, bad. Now, I've said the effect of this is powerful and gives these simple words energy and force. Now, that is the effect of the rhyme. It gives them energy, it gives them strength, it gives them force. Perhaps MacLeod is suggesting that we stereotype the dog in a simplistic way. Just as if someone yells out, you're a bad girl, you're a stupid girl. That has energy, it has force, and it's also simplistic. And perhaps that's what we've done to the dog. We can dismiss the animal too without much thought. Oh, that's just the bad one. And the dog himself then sees himself in this light and has very little self-worth. Everybody calls me bad. Well, then I'm bad. I don't care. And that's what is the mood, I think, that comes through in this piece of writing here. Give it a think if you understand and if you agree with me. I'd love to know if you do. Do let me know. Which has led to me, why is this written in the first person? It's not that the poet has said he's a mad dog, he's a bad dog. This is the dog seeing himself as that, isn't it? So it is written in the first person, and it gives us, therefore, the dog's point of view. The poet has chosen to write in the first person, as this enables, or that makes the reader understand the world from the point of view of the dog. We can realize that this hard, lonely life is what he's chosen, and that in fact he is happy. We can begin to understand his motivation. Okay, or perhaps he would have been happy in the other life, but he's got this one, so he's determined to be happy in it. Now, going to close reading of the second stanza. Right, how does he describe the pets at home? Look at the words. And so I have highlighted the words that I wanted you to look at. Lapdog, licking dirty feet, sleek dog, meek dog, cringing, fireside and well-filled plate. Now, if you had looked them up, as I asked you to do, you're starting to get through to the meaning of those words. You're sifting down to those meanings. I told you I'd talk about lapdogs. Lapdogs are pampered, usually small dogs, spend most of his life in his owner's lap, being cuddled and given treats. Pampered means he gets all the treats. He's a happy dog. He has a good life. Everything that little doggy wants, he gets. Can you imagine this owner with the dog on his lap, and the dog has this great big cushion of the owner's lap? He says about the lapdog that it's licking dirty feet. Now, nobody likes to lick dirty feet, do they? That's disgusting. If you licked somebody's feet, particularly dirty feet, you think, are you trying to suck up to them or something? You're trying to become their best friend or something. Would you agree? So what we say is these are animals flirting back. Even though the owner is disgusting, they're prepared to lick their feet. They have no pride, in other words. Do you see that? Sleek. Now, a sleek dog reminds me of a dog with a lovely, smooth, well-brushed coat. He's been well fed, so it's all glossy and shiny. Meek means very timid or shy, never expressing her own needs. Anything you say, that's a meek person quite often. Not wanting to push their own agenda and not having any gumption of his own again. Cringing. Now that is actually a word with lots of what we'd say is negative connotations. It's not a nice thing to be cringing. You're bending over in fear. You're afraid somebody's going to hit you. It's please, 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 I'll do anything to make you happy. Smile, smile, lick, lick. That's cringing. We don't like it. Fireside tells me that these dogs are warm by a fire on a cold day or night. And a well-filled plate tells me these dogs have plenty of good food. Now, that sounds like a good life, and it sounds like, well, maybe you would like to be them, but words like I'll never be one, why? Because he just says, I never will because they're disgusting, or I never will because I won't get the opportunity. You decide. But licking dirty feet tells me because they're disgusting. And he describes them as meek. Come on, where's your guts? Where's your strength? Cringing for my meat. I'm not a coward like them. Do you see how I'm doing it? So not for me, the fireside. Okay, so I'm never going to enjoy the warm fire and the lots of food as a result. Now, perhaps I'd like to be, but I don't think he wants to be a lapdog. Do you see how I got to that point of view? And so, how do these words describe the pets at home? This is how I've written it properly out for you. Other dogs are well fed and well groomed. sleek. They can be warmed by a fireside and never go hungry. They are lap dogs, pets which sit on wealthy owners' laps, being spoiled and giving treats. She depicts them as cowardly, cringing for food, willing to debase themselves to please humans by, quote, licking dirty feet. The lone dog despises humans, that's hates humans, as is evident in the adjective dirty. He calls human beings dirty. The alliteration of lap and licking makes the phrase soft, as though these dogs are really soft and overfed and have no strength. The adjective meek suggests that they will submit to anything and have no personality or will of their own. So do you see how I got to the idea that he does not like those dogs? So how is he treated in contrast? Look at that last line. And of course, are we therefore surprised in view of that? So firstly, look at the words that describe how he is treated. Shut door, sharp stone, cuff, kick, hate. Those are the words that tell you how he is treated. But don't stop there. Now start to analyze the information and then the way it is presented. Let's see if we can say something clever and notice any techniques he's using. So, for those of you who are still with me, follow this. If you're finding it really hard, just think about it, come back, have a think, have a replay, have another think. Here it is. Does this make his attitude surprising? And what about the repetition of and in the fourth line? So we see in contrast to the lapdog, that the lone dog is mistreated and abused. Not only is he unwelcome in people's homes, we got shut dog, but he is pelted with stones and beaten and kicked. The alliteration of shut and sharp, sh, echoes the sound of a door closing, while the onomatopoeic word cuff and kick, do you remember that word onomatopoeic? Sounds like a cuff and sounds like a kick, are monosyllabic and reminiscent of the blows he receives. All are summarized by one adjective at the end of the list: hate. So he gets cuffed, he gets kicked. Ultimately, it's hate. The repetition of and, shut door and sharp stone and cuff and kick and hate, emphasizes the constant suffering he endures. And well done to many of you who got that and worked it out. Well done, girls. Now, what about his dog's attitude is surprising? Now, for me, I would look at that line, not for me. And I'll never be, not for me. It is intriguing that the dog should say, not for me. Now, I think intriguing means makes me wonder, it makes me ask, it makes me curious. That the dog should say, not for me, about comfort. Now, it could mean, or it could be interpreted in two ways. Either he is barred from these pleasures available to other dogs. So, it's not for me, it's for other dogs, because I'm not allowed in. He is barred from these pleasures available to other dogs, or alternatively, he is rejecting this lifestyle. It's not his choice. Oh, that's not for me. I wouldn't choose that. Do you see how it could be both? And MacLeod repeats the phrase, not for me, at the beginning of the next stanza. So, and I think that ambivalence, which is a great word to describe it, ambivalence, means we're not too sure exactly which way it's meant to be read, perhaps both ways, shows that you're really reading something closely. Now, not for me, the other dogs running by my side. Some have run a short while, but none of them would bide. Put in modern English, that means, well, I don't have other dogs running by my side. Some of them have managed to run along beside me for a little while, but none stayed. Oh, mine is still the lone trail, the hard trail, the best. Wide wind and wild stars, and the hunger of the quest. Oh, now that is such an interesting stanza, so much going on. So let's have a look at the whole thing and then get down to those noun phrases that I've picked out. Wide wind, wild stars. How does he feel about being outdoors and what's emphasized by our mind? So there is something rather sad about him. The other dogs not running by his side and none of them staying. I think that's a very lonely thing. Nobody would stay. Nobody would keep up with you. So he says, oh, mine is the hard, lone trail. Yes, unfortunately for me, I have a lone trail, and it's a hard trail. And we feel terribly sorry for him. And then suddenly he throws us this curveball. Wow, where did that come? He says it's the best trail. And so why does he say it's the best trail? He says why it's the best is that I have wide wind and wild stars and the hunger of the quest. Do you understand what he's saying in that last stanza now? So let's write about it. The final stanza emphasizes that the dog is alone, that other dogs have sometimes joined him, but they never stay with him because it is a hard trail and lonely. Do you see that? He just couldn't keep up the pace. But let's look at the words the best, wide wind, wild stars. The dog declares, and this is hard, girls, and if you don't get it, never mind, but do your best. The dog declares that despite the loneliness and hardship, this trail is the best trail. Well, that's a surprising attitude in the face of his suffering. Instead of comfort and fellow companions, he has wide wind and wild stars, which represent his freedom and the beauty around him. Wide wind, so much space. Wild stars. Stars are beautiful, wild, crazy. Do you see that? So we've got the freedom and the beauty around him which would never be enjoyed by a tame dog. That dog on the the lap dog is never going to see the wide wind or the wild stars, is he? So, wide wind and wild stars represent the freedom and beauty around him which would never be enjoyed by a tame dog. The alliteration of W, did you hear it? Wide, wind, wild. The alliteration of W, wah, 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 suggests the sound of wind. Wah, wah, wah. Can you hear that? As he runs on the hills. And the stars suggest that he's in a countryside away from civilization. Beautiful. Black sky filled with stars. Sounds gorgeous, doesn't it? The stars too, I think of a star, it's distant and beautiful. And if he's aiming for those stars, when we talk about aiming for the stars, we're aiming for something very high that we may never reach. Do you agree? But he's aiming for the stars. So the stars are distant and beautiful, and perhaps it's his quest to reach them. That's what he's wanting to do, get to the stars. But we don't know. So I've said what his quest is not made clear because we don't know that. That's Mrs. Benson guessing. Mrs. Benson working it out from reading that. But he's definitely got a hunger for that. That means he wants to be on that quest very, very badly, doesn't he? So perhaps he himself is not sure, but it does make me think that the dog is adventurous and without limitations. Let's run and down their hills, excuse my crazy accents and bad ones, but still, do you know what I mean? He doesn't mind rushing off where nobody else has been. Now, he describes all this as oh, mine. Now, I get the impression with this dog that he has had very little of his own. He's always on the move, so he won't have his spot. He hasn't got his own food. He hasn't got his own master. He hasn't got his own anything. But he says, this trail is mine. And I think that's what makes it so special to him. He describes the trail as mine, declaring proudly that all the hardships and freedom has been his choice. This trail is my trail, it's my life, the one he can own. He also feels that the wide wind and the wild stars are also his, something that other dogs never experience. So I don't end up feeling sorry for this dog. I do in a way, but I also think, wow, that is one crazy, powerful, mad, lovely, lovely dog. Do you see where I'm going? Last question, though, I did put in was about structure and rhyme. Does the poem rhyme? It has a very clear rhyme. Da-duff, 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 da-duff. Does it give this poem? What does it give? Well, to me, it's almost like the thundering of the dog running along, da-dong, da-dong, running through the forests. And it moves, like him moving through those winds and moving on that quest where the other dogs are panting along and saying, I can't keep up, let's have a rest, lone dog. No, says he, let's keep running. And that comes out, I think, in the rhyme. So don't just say the poet puts rhyme in to make it interesting. The poet does it for much, much more than that. So MacLeod has chosen to give this poem a strong, driving rhythm and rhyme, which reflects the energy and passion of the dog who is constantly on the move. Now, my last question was a very challenging one. And this is the girls who are going to end up getting their A's for GCSE or 9s GCSE or top grades, okay? And that is looking at his intention. What is his intention? Is it a universal intention? How do we feel about this dog at the end of all of this? Do we begin to get inside of his life? I don't know about you, but I think I do. I can see this dog. I've met girls and boys like that. I've met men and women like that. They are wild, they are a bit mad. Some people think they are crazy and they should be behaving themselves and behaving much more like everybody else, but they just shoot off on their own trail, doing their own thing, even when people reject them and throw stones at them, metaphorically speaking, or shut the door in their faces and we don't want them around. So yes, I do think it has a universal message. It is about people as well as dogs, because I've seen people like that dog, and reading about that dog helps me understand some of those people. So I've said this about his intention and his tone. His tone, I don't feel sorry for the dog. I admire the dog. I encourage the dog on. I'm enjoying the bravery of the dog. Do you see in this poem? That's my feeling. Although MacLeod is describing the dog in her poem, her message could equally apply to people. There are those who, like the dog, seem to be different, outsiders, who make others uncomfortable. These people live on the edges of society, not part of the social norm, living harsh lives. Think about the people who end up in jail, who are kicked out of school or expelled, the people who are mocked in class, or the people who live on tough estates. Those are the people I'm talking about, the people who just leave. Some would dearly like to be part of the norm, but a few prefer the freedom which such a life offers. They don't have to do what pleases others. They can shock people without shame. These are often the artists and inventors and explorers, and the poem urges us to accept their choices and give them dignity, not abuse. And girls, if you look at great artists, they are often people who others think are crazy, cuckoo. Inventors were often locked up, thrown out of the church, thrown out of society, chucked in prison. Explorers, considered crazy people. But without them, our world is not what it is. Do you agree? For them it is the wide wind and the wild stars. For them it is the hunger of the quest. And that is why I think this poem is also about society. Whoops! Did Mrs. Benson come a long way? How many of you think I'm crazy to say such a thing? I hope some of you think that you got it. If you do think you got it, please message me on Show My Homework and tell me if you agree with me. And if you think that Miss Benson, this was way too hard for me, message me and tell me on Show My Homework. Okay, but thank you very much all, and well done for your work on this poem. Bye bye for today.